Come back and well, it's time for us to go through the newspaper review, and I'll start by first of all introducing the panel that we have here this morning. And I'll start with the lady. We are joined by Ruth Ambogo, who's a political analyst. Good morning. You're looking very good and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay. We're also joined by Mark Bichachi, who's a political strategist. We have Philip Magal, an advocate and a lawyer. And last but not least, we're joined by Dr. Mutie, who's a governance expert. Lady and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We'll go straight to the dailies this morning, and we'll start off with the standard as usual, where we have the headline, Governors Panic as Court Hits Waititu. Now, yesterday was when he was getting the ruling as to whether he should indeed stay out of office and what the terms that would be regarding him not being in office. And of course, he had contested and said that he is the office, and as a result, even if he was stopped from going to a certain location, then he still would access his office and run county affairs. But according to what the ruling was given, this has also caused jitters amongst other, governors who may be accused of graft. Let me start with you, Philip Magal, from a legal perspective. Yes. This, of course, is following the ruling that was given by Judge Mumbi Ngugi, yes, that he should stay out of office. And this is what I guess many Kenyans would expect. But somehow, governors thought that maybe it should be different for them, especially by virtue of the fact that they're elected members.
Yes, of course, due to the fact that they're elected, the powers of the court to issue such orders become questionable. But as to most Kenyans, I'm sure this is a relief. You cannot have a thief take care of your property. But then our law, I think, did leave this particular item out. And that is why, even as we go into, as we talk of constitutional review, these are some of the things that we ought to look at. Should people who've been charged with crime still hold such offices? But then again, it's not that we don't have checks and balances for exactly such occasions, only that they're not being invoked. In such a case, of course, an impeachment motion should pass, and the county assembly should deliberate upon such an issue and have this person step aside. Alternatively, we have the leadership and integrity chapter within our constitution. When the court had the occasion to interpret it, they did Kenyans a disfavor when they said that a person is not guilty until he's exhausted all appeal mechanism. This was in the Mumo Matemu case, as well as in the case where the president and the DP were in court over whether they should run for the 2013 elections or not. And the court ruled that they were liable, they could run for the presidency. And I think that is where we've been going wrong. Our courts have gone wrong, but I think now the leadership and integrity chapter in our constitution is taking effect. And I hope that this trend continues, though I have to give a caveat that really I am doubtful as to the legal basis of this particular order.
Decision.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Mutie, from a governance expert perspective, there are those who've said that this is a populist way of doing it, and it appeals to the masses. However, in terms of legally, it may not stand. Your thoughts on that?
Very well. I think, to me, this is a good move by the courts to set up precedents, because I want to disabuse the notion that has always been given as a narrative that governors are above the law in the way they conduct themselves when handling matters of the counties. And being the chief bosses within the counties, I think this is a good precedent that has been set by the courts, where they can step aside. And of course, this was actually given a precursor by the ruling by Justice Ngugi Mumbi, who actually said the same kind of ruling against the governor for Samburu, Kasaine, who cannot access the offices and execute his duties as a governor. So the same has actually been applied to Waititu's case, which is good. But this actually raises a very fundamental question about the weaknesses of the Constitution in terms of what is the way forward when it comes to such an issue. While governors have been barred away from accessing these offices, what are the limitations of the duties that county deputy governors have? What is their role, and what is it that they can do in the absence of the governors? Because, of course, the Constitution stipulates certain kind of duties that a deputy governor can't do. He can't sack, he can't dismiss, he can't recruit the county executive committee members, and so on and so on. And therefore, these are some of the bottlenecks in the constitution that need to be refined once Kenyans take into the referendum, if it's coming over, to review some of these clauses to give a wider berth of the provisions of the law so that we do not have lacunas such as this one.
All right.
If I may just add, this, from a legal perspective, it can be argued that this is what we call judicial tyranny or judicial dictatorship, whereby
or
the
judicial
judiciary,
activism.
yes, where judiciary supplants its will for that of the people. Remember, Waititu has been elected by the same people who drafted and adopted the new constitution and, in fact, bequeathed the court with,
and of course
power.
Therefore, that has been the bone of contention in terms of the will of the people.
Yes,
the will of the people.
I personally would like to completely disagree with him. I don't feel that this is judicial tyrannism. In my view, in fact, I feel that this is the judiciary trying to give life to the Constitution, because Chapter 6 of the Constitution would, in essence, be useless if we would still have, you know, it would be useless, and it would defeat allowing governors who have been accused of corruption to go back to office, would defeat, you know, good governance and the very many other values that have been enshrined in the Chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity.
You know what they'll say? They'll say that he is innocent until proved guilty.
Remember when Justice Mumbi Ngugi gave the ruling that governors would have to step aside and be suspended from duty upon being convicted of corruption crimes, she basically overturned, is it the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, Section 62, which was protecting governors from suspension upon being convicted of corruption crimes. And in my view, let me just finish this. I think what the judiciary is doing is, first of all, trying to give life to the Constitution, and then again also correcting the ills of the lawmakers. Because remember, that particular section of the law that protected the governors was one that was enacted by members of parliament. And this again, for me, brings me to the question that when these laws are being enacted, when these laws are being drafted, when we are called to public participation forums, do we participate? Because where were we when this particular part of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act was passing? Because, I mean, the lawmakers themselves were making this law remember, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act is basically supposed to protect the nation from corruption and help us reduce corruption.
Yes.
But then within that particular law, they are protecting themselves, and yet they are the biggest perpetrators of corruption. So in my view, the judiciary is working very well, correcting the ills of parliament and giving life to the Constitution.
All right, Philip, can I just allow Mark at least to have his opening remarks?
Yes.
I can see he's literally burning on his seat.
Yes, because I really don't like it when the elites of Kenyan society want to make common sense questions matter of judiciary tyranny, you know, the constitution of this. Let's be clear. If you take care of sheep, okay, and wake up in the morning, 2 sheep are missing, then you go to court to tell us to allow you to continue taking care of sheep until you're proven guilty.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Where does it make sense? What are we discussing?
What if the sheep are the ones that elected you?
What Waititu
What
is
if the sheep
accused
are the ones that
of,
elected
what Waititu
you
is
to take
accused
care of
of
them?
is stealing from the county office of Kiambu.
Yes.
That's what he's
But
accused
Mark,
of.
we're using
All
your
the
analogy.
players
all the evidence.
Using your analogy,
Yes,
what
yes.
if it's the sheep that are saying we want
Yes,
this
we
sheep
want
back?
this. We want this
Just
shepherd.
wait, just wait. Let me finish. So this guy, the scene of the crime is called the office of governor, correct? So why are we debating whether he should be allowed to access the scene of the crime?
Yeah.
Which bomber?
Tamper with evidence.
Which bomber today?
Wait,
the bombers of
in this particular case, he's not being, initially it was not to access the scene of the crime.
Yes.
You continue doing whatever you do, but do not access the scene of the crime.
Yes. Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And the question here is, you've already assumed that he is guilty.
No, it's not an assumption of
listen,
guilt.
It's not an assumption of guilt. It's an investigation.
How do you separate
Yeah,
the two?
because let me
Listen,
tell you,
today,
yeah.
if my house is stolen from, okay, you cannot expect the police to go get the prime suspect and tell the prime suspect, please hang out in his sitting room as we gather evidence.
Yeah.
It does not work like that.
And then
you see,
also-
and let's
if
also
I
be
may-
very clear. Number two. People are using the constitution to say that it says until you exhaust all avenues of appeal. True. But we are the same people who clap in very great joy when people in government are suspended when they are caught in corruption cases. Why did we say they should be suspended? Why is Rotich today suspended? It is because
he was appointed.
My friends, you finished. You finished saying what you were saying. Then you want me not to finish. Let me finish.
to say something.
This guy is suspended on half pay. Why? Because even here at KTN where we sit, if your microphone goes missing, the sound guy back there will stand suspended until CCTV proves who stole it. So now is that guilt? No.
But
it is
the
proper
difference between the two
procedure.
examples you've used is that one is appointed, one is elected.
One is
And that's where the
elected.
bone of
That's the
contention
will of
comes.
the people.
I want to hear from Brian.
Yes.
Just wait. Brian.
I think it doesn't matter whether you are appointed or whether you are nominated or whether you are elected. The bottom line is that you have contravened Chapter 6.
Okay.
You have been found to answer, to be wanting in terms of answering some few
You are
questions.
under investigation.
You are under investigation. But again, I want to disabuse this notion that by being told to step aside or by being told not to get anywhere near your office or the scene of incident, as Bichachi would want to put it, does it amount to removal from office?
Yeah.
This is just paving way for the
Investigation.
investigators to carry out their investigation.
Yeah.
Once they are done, because you are likely to tamper with evidence. You are the CEO of that county. You are the person with the highest mandate. You can call the shots. You can intimidate people. And therefore, to protect the sanctity of the investigations, you have to be, told to keep away from those officers so that due diligence is carried on and the investigation is carried thoroughly so that you can answer these questions that you are being accused of.
And then I think the argument,
Just a second, just a minute. The argument that we need to actually have here is, why are we saying that some people need to step aside when others are not being told to step aside? I want to say this. Whether you have stolen chicken, whether you have stolen billions, you are all equal and you are all culpable in the eyes of the law. And therefore, there's nothing like a governor should stay in office when he's being investigated. Of course, that doesn't make any sense, Michael. It doesn't make any sense to the investigators. This person is likely to intimidate. But again, we are saying in the governance perspective, what is the best way that we need to do so that we protect the sanctity of the seat of the governor? One, we need to ensure that while the governor is away, the runnings of the counties are not affected. How do we do this? Because there, as I said before, there are functions that are going to be affected. Remember, this man is the signatory of the funds of the county. Is the man who calls the shots in terms of financial disbursement. Is the person who has the access of the funds of the counties. There is no way that unless we change the law, unless we change the Financial Act, this is going to have a lot of overbearing within the financial transactions of the county.
Okay. Philip?
In effect, what has happened is that the High Court has appointed Nyoro the governor Kiambu.
The High Court.
Does the High Court have such powers?
No.
What we are saying here is that the court doesn't have power to make laws. The court doesn't have powers to supplant the will of the people. If at all, let me just finish. If at all we have issues with this particular clause which says that state officers don't stand suspended on being prosecuted, then it is Parliament to change the laws. In a properly functioning system, the AG would have generated this particular clause, it would have been debated and the law would have been amended. But as it is, the leadership and integrity chapter in the Constitution doesn't talk of suspension of governors, meaning therefore that the court is making laws. We have our Njiku in Kiambu who voted for Waititu. He's seen Waititu throw stones in this town, yet on the 7th of August 2017, he queued as from 5 o'clock in the morning, some as late as 12, and elected him. So who are we now to tell this particular Njiku that we don't want your governor, let's give you another one?
Mike, I am banning. One, because we are confusing between the role of the court in interpreting law as well as
Enforcing
making
the
law.
And
And
so
it is,
What the court
it is
is
making
doing
law
right
in this
now-
particular
Hang on,
What
instance.
the court is
Let
doing
us-
right now is not making law. There's no new law the court has
Interpreting.
made. The court is simply interpreting law. And the bit of law that the court is interpreting right now is Chapter 6 of the Constitution, trying to explain to us what does good governance mean? What does in the public interest mean? That when a governor has been accused of corruption, we are not saying that now we are now saying that this governor, we're not convicting the governor before the legal process is complete. We are just saying that the governor has been accused of corruption. Allow for investigations to take place. And we are also saying the court has interpreted a particular section of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act to be unconstitutional, not in line with Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And then again, when we are talking about the Wanjiko, just how much, what kind of powers does the Wanjiko have to remove a governor from office? The power that the Wanjiko has is the vote. So does that mean that for as long as a governor is in office, he or she is free to do whatever she or he wills to do until the
Wanjiko
next
can vote.
election, until the next election comes? No, that it doesn't mean that. And that is why we have institutions such as the judiciary to help us in certain circumstances where the Wanjiko cannot come and forcefully remove the governor from office. We have the judiciary to act and speak on behalf of the people. So let us not confuse between the powers of the judiciary to interpret law and to make law.
All right, and I want us to move on to something else.
just
For
allow
this
me- just
newspaper
allow
review,
me-
we've
just
stuck
allow
to
me
one
30
thing.
seconds.
Then
30
30 seconds, and we move on to something else.
One of the things that we need to understand, that the reason why there are three branches of government is to check and balance each other. One of those checks and balances that Wanjiku promulgated is the judiciary.
Yes.
That is supposed to protect Wanjiku from criminality and
Yeah.
stupidity.
Yes.
Because now we are discussing whether a murderer should be allowed to go visit the home of the person he murdered. Sure.
Imagine.
All right, we'll continue with that discussion in a bit, but let's look at other